The security booth at the entrance of Willow Heights stood like a checkpoint to another world. Clean, crisp lines, white brick, and the emblem of the development company shining above a tinted window. Cameron Ellis waited behind the wheel of his black pickup, watching the guard flip through a clipboard. The guard didn't return his glance, didn't ask for ID, just frowned. "You making a delivery?" the guard asked, still not looking at him. "No, I'm heading to lot 17. The guard's brow furrowed. "That's private property. You can't be in here without clearance." Cameron leaned slightly out of the window, voice calm. "I'm not here to cause problems. I need to check on the house being built. Lot 17. The guard finally looked at him, then looked harder. Skin, clothes, plain polo, work jeans, dusty boots. Not the outfit of a homeowner. Definitely not someone who belonged in Willow Heights. The guard's tone sharpened. "Sir, this is a high-end community. If you don't have a scheduled appointment or an escort, I'll have to ask you to turn around." Cameron didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice, just held the man's gaze, and waited. Cameron didn't move. The line of cars behind him began to grow. A silver BMW honked once, short and irritated. A woman in a sun hat glanced out her window, her expression souring when she saw who was causing the holdup. The guard tapped the side of the clipboard with his pen. "Sir, I'm serious. You can't wait here. If you've got business with the developer, call their office. This entrance isn't for visitors." "I am the developer," Cameron said quietly. The guard froze, blinked, then laughed once, short and disbelieving. "Okay, sure. And I'm the CEO of Tesla." Cameron didn't flinch. "Call the number on the bottom of that clipboard. Office of Ellis Development Group. Ask for Madeline." The guard hesitated, the joke fading from his face. He glanced at the clipboard, then back at Cameron. "You're serious? I wouldn't waste your time if I wasn't." Behind them, another car honked, longer this time. The BMW reversed, whipped around, and took the exit lane in frustration. The woman in the sun hat shook her head slowly, watching Cameron like a problem she couldn't understand. The guard stepped back toward his booth, holding the clipboard tighter than before. Cameron sat quietly, still, unmoving. He'd been here before. Not this gate, not this exact moment, but this feeling. This slow, steady measuring of worth through suspicion. And he wasn't going to blink first. Inside the booth, the guard fumbled with the phone. His name badge read Greg. He kept glancing through the window, as if expecting Cameron to drive off or start shouting. But Cameron stayed still, one hand on the steering wheel, the other resting on the console. Greg dialed the number, waited. When someone picked up, his posture changed, straightened, stiffened. "Yeah, hi, this is Gate 1 at Willow Heights. I've got a gentleman here claiming he's with Ellis Development." Pause. "Cameron Ellis. Says he's going to lot 17. A longer pause. Greg blinked, then nodded slowly, eyes widening just slightly. "Oh, yeah, I see. Yes, ma'am. Right away." He hung up, took a deep breath, walked back to the truck, slower this time. Mr. Ellis," Greg said, voice lower. Madeline confirmed. I didn't realize. You're clear to go." Cameron didn't smile, didn't gloat, just nodded once. "Appreciate it." Greg opened the gate with a buzz, avoiding eye contact. "Lot 17's up the hill, second right." Cameron pulled forward slowly, the truck humming as it passed through the gate. In his rearview mirror, he saw Greg still standing there, mouth slightly open, hands still holding the clipboard like a shield. The gate creaked closed behind him. The road through Willow Heights curved gently uphill, lined with manicured hedges and young trees still propped up by stakes. The kind of neighborhood meant to feel exclusive but welcoming if you looked the part. Cameron took it all in as he drove. Every lot, every foundation, every paved sidewalk. His company had touched each one. And yet the eyes that met his along the way didn't see that. A man jogging with a golden retriever slowed as the truck passed. He stared for a moment, not waving, not smiling, just watching. Cameron met his gaze briefly, then looked away. At lot 14, 2 construction workers were laying out paneling. One of them, young, with a clipboard tucked under his arm, gave Cameron a casual nod as he passed. Lot 17 came into view at the end of the next curve. Frame structure complete, windows installed last week, drywall going in by the end of the month. Cameron parked just off the gravel, stepped out, and took in the sight. It was the best lot, elevated, facing the hills with morning light that stretched long and soft across the ground. He'd picked it himself, From the porch of Lot 16 next door, a man in khakis and a tucked-in polo watched him. The kind of posture that said, "I live here." "Do you?" Cameron ignored it. He walked the perimeter slowly, checking the corners, running his hand along the wooden frame. He wasn't just inspecting the build. He was reminding himself this was his. Every square foot, even if they didn't see it yet. The man from Lot 16 didn't go back inside. He crossed the lawn slowly, deliberate steps on fresh sod. Mid-50s, thinning hair, a smartwatch strapped tight on his wrist. He stopped at the edge of the gravel where it met Cameron's lot. "You with the crew?" he asked, voice loud enough to carry across the construction noise behind them. Cameron didn't look up right away. Finished noting a corner of the foundation, then stood. "No. Just checking on the build." The man squinted. "You the foreman?" Cameron kept his tone even. "Not exactly." The man stepped a little closer. "Well, I live next door. Richard Wells. Just moved in last month. You should tell your guys to keep the music down in the mornings. Some of us work from home." "I'll make a note," Cameron said. Richard looked at him, really looked this time, and his brows pulled together slightly. "Sorry, what was your name again?" "Cameron." There was a beat. Richard's eyes drifted to the truck, then back to Cameron's face. "You here a lot? Haven't seen you around before." Cameron didn't answer right away. Just let the silence hang for a moment. "I'm around when I need to be." Richard gave a tight-lipped smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "Well, just make sure the crew knows. This neighborhood's got a standard, you know?" "I know," Cameron said, then turned and walked toward the back of the lot. He could feel Richard watching him, trying to fit the pieces together. But Cameron didn't give him the satisfaction. Not yet. Near the back of the lot, a white van pulled in. The side read Dorsey and Sons Construction. A tall man climbed out, broad shoulders, tool belt already strapped on, phone tucked to his ear. When he spotted Cameron, he ended the call mid-sentence. "Cam, didn't know you were dropping by today?" Cameron smiled faintly. "Thought I'd check on progress. Framing's ahead of schedule. We start drywall Monday. Want a walkthrough?" "Yeah." They walked the frame together, Cameron noting the subtle details, the angle of the stairway, the spacing of the recessed lights, the window placement in the upstairs office. He pointed to a beam. "That's half an inch off center." The contractor squinted. "Damn. You're right. I'll have the guys shift it." Behind them, Richard Wells lingered near his yard, pretending to inspect his flower bed but clearly watching. Cameron didn't acknowledge him. The contractor, Mitch, lowered his voice. "That guy been sniffing around?" "He thinks I'm with the crew." Mitch snorted. "Figures. You tell him who you are." Cameron shook his head. "Not yet." "You gonna?" "Eventually." Mitch grinned. "Let me know when. I'll bring popcorn." Cameron didn't smile back. Not because he didn't find it amusing, but because this wasn't new. Not here. Not anywhere. And the real reaction, the one that always came after, never felt like something worth laughing at. Cameron was heading back to his truck when his phone buzzed. A message from Madeline, his assistant. "Client visit rescheduled to Thursday. I left the revised floor plans on your desk. Also, the HOA chair called again. Wants a meeting." Didn't say why? Cameron stared at the last line a second longer. He typed a quick reply, "Thanks. I'll call him myself." Sliding the phone back into his pocket, he turned just in time to see a silver Lexus rolling to a stop behind his truck. The license plate frame read Willow Heights HOA President. A man in his early 60s stepped out wearing a linen button-up and loafers with no socks. His sunglasses stayed on as he approached. "You must be with the contractors," the man said, offering a smile that didn't quite settle into his face. "Mind if I ask what you're doing here?" "We like to keep tabs on who's coming and going." Cameron didn't offer his hand. "Cameron Ellis." The man paused, blinked, then forced another smile. "Oh, Ellis. That name sounds familiar. You work for the developer." "I am the developer." Silence. Brief but sharp. The man straightened slightly. The sunglasses came off. "Oh. Well, I wasn't expecting that. I figured." The man tried to recover. "I'm Ted Hawkins, HOA president. We've been getting some inquiries from residents. Questions about the lot lines, construction hours, landscaping plans. Just trying to keep the neighborhood cohesive, you understand." Cameron didn't nod. Didn't reassure him. "You want to talk landscaping," he said quietly. "You can schedule an appointment. Through my office." Ted hesitated. Cameron stepped around him, opened the truck door. "Have a good afternoon," he added, not looking back. Ted stood there, sunglasses dangling from one hand, trying to recalibrate everything he thought he knew about how this neighborhood worked. Back at the office, Cameron slid the revised floor plans from his desk and studied them quietly. Angled roof lines, room dimensions, green space allocations, it all looked right. Still, his thoughts were elsewhere. Word would spread. Not in a loud way. Not through emails or announcements. But through whispers. By the next morning, 2 residents would coincidentally pass by Lot 17 during their walks, offering strained smiles and slow nods. Ted would casually bring up neighborhood cohesion again during a community meeting. Richard would keep glancing toward the lot whenever his blinds were cracked open. By Friday, one of the builders would mention someone from the HOA stopping by with questions about zoning. Another would note a woman taking pictures from her porch across the street. It wasn't direct. Never was. It came dressed in concern, in policy, in phrases like just checking in or trying to be consistent. Cameron had seen it all before. When he started his first project, they called his office twice a week. By the third build, they called the bank. Now, the calls came dressed as visits. He leaned back in his chair, letting the floor plan rest flat on the desk. He didn't need their approval, but they needed his. And deep down, they were starting to realize that. By the following Monday, Ted Hawkins requested an informal chat at the clubhouse. Cameron agreed, though he didn't need to. He arrived on time, dressed like always, no suit, no flash. Just presence. Inside the sunlit room, a few HOA board members sat stiffly around a long table. Water bottles, notepads, and a printed agenda they didn't think he'd see were laid out neatly. Ted stood as Cameron entered. "Mr. Ellis, thanks for coming." "Cameron's fine." "Of course." Ted gestured to the empty chair. "We just wanted to clarify a few things. The development has been moving fast. Some residents are concerned about how future lots will fit into the overall aesthetic of Willow Heights." Cameron sat slowly. "The aesthetic." "Yes. The tone of the neighborhood. Uniformity. Continuity. You understand." He did. They were talking about grass color and fence lines, but what they meant was something else. "How many homes here were built by Ellis Development?" Cameron asked. Ted blinked. "I don't know offhand." 17, including the model home. A silence stretched. "You chose us," Cameron continued. "You reviewed our portfolio. Approved the plans. We're not questioning the builds," another board member said quickly. "It's just we didn't realize." She trailed off. Cameron tilted his head. "Didn't realize what?" Ted jumped in. "There's just been some confusion. Residents asking questions. We want to make sure everything is transparent." "Transparency's good," Cameron said quietly. "But let's be clear about what this is." No one answered. He stood, slow and deliberate. This community isn't just being built. It's being shaped. And not just by policies or paint colors. He let the silence return, heavy. "I won't interfere with your board. But I will protect what I've built." And then he left. No handshakes. No reassurance. Just a quiet walk back into the sun. By Tuesday, the atmosphere in Willow Heights had shifted. Not publicly. Not in any way you could name outright. But people moved differently. The woman who'd taken photos from her porch now waved hesitantly when Cameron's truck passed. The jogger with the golden retriever offered a curt nod. Richard from Lot 16 mowed his lawn with his back rigidly straight, stealing occasional glances across the property line. Cameron noticed. Of course he did. But he gave them nothing back. Inside Lot 17, the drywall crew was already at work. Mitch waved him over. "You shook him up," Mitch said with a grin. Ted called twice yesterday, trying to clarify the developer's long-term vision. Cameron didn't smile. "Let him guess." Mitch laughed, then dropped his voice. "That neighbor khakis side part he's been circling. Thought about introducing himself again this morning, then bailed." "Richard," Cameron said. Mitch raised a brow. "You remembered his name?" "People like him always come back around." Later that afternoon, Richard did. Caught Cameron near the back fence, clipboard in hand. "Hey," Richard called out, forcing a casual tone. "Didn't get to properly introduce myself the other day?" "You did," Cameron replied without turning. Richard hesitated, then walked closer anyway. "So, you really designed all this?" "I built it." A pause. Richard scratched his head. "Didn't expect that." Cameron turned then. "Why not?" Richard opened his mouth, closed it, then said, "Guess I just assumed." Cameron nodded once. "That's what most people do." And walked away. The next morning, Madeline forwarded Cameron an email from the HOA board. It was full of polite language, appreciation for collaboration, an invitation to join future planning discussions, and a vague offer to co-host a community event showcasing the development's shared values. Cameron read it twice. They weren't apologizing. They were repositioning. He picked up the phone. "Maddie, schedule a response. 3 sentences. Keep it professional." She already knew the tone. That afternoon, the reply went out. "Appreciate the invitation. I'll continue to engage where it aligns with our development goals. We prioritize actions over appearances." Short, firm. The message was clear. No need for pleasantries. Just respect. Later that evening, Cameron walked Lot 17 alone. No clipboard. No inspection. Just air and quiet. The sun dipped low behind the hills. The framing cast long shadows across the dirt. This house would sell in days once it was listed. It was beautiful. Elevated. Balanced. But for now, it wasn't about profit. It was about presence. Proof not that he belonged here, but that he built what they were standing on. that he didn't have to knock on the door, because he held the keys. Late Thursday morning, a black Range Rover pulled up to lot 17. Polished, silent, deliberate. Out stepped a woman in a navy pantsuit, clipboard in hand, heels that weren't made for gravel. She approached Cameron with purpose. "Mr. Ellis? I'm Vanessa Tran, realtor for the buyers touring the lot today." Cameron nodded once. "You're early. I like to walk the space before clients arrive. Helps me frame the story." Cameron tilted his head. "And what story are you framing?" Vanessa glanced around. "Top-tier finishes. Clean elevation. East-facing views. Quiet corner lot. It sells itself. But you sell it anyway." She gave a slight smile. "That's the job." He didn't smile back. A moment passed. "Do you want to know the story?" he asked. Vanessa looked confused. "The house?" "No," Cameron said, stepping beside her. "The moment. The first time I stood on this lot, no foundation, no approvals. Just dirt and brush and the idea that it could be more." Vanessa was quiet now. Cameron's voice stayed steady. "I spent a year negotiating the land rights. Another getting permits through a city that didn't want change. And I walked the slope every week as we laid the first beams." She nodded slowly, unsure whether to speak. "This isn't just a listing," he said. "It's a reminder." Vanessa didn't ask what he meant. Maybe she already knew. Moments later, a black sedan rolled up the hill, clients inside. Vanessa straightened, ready to do her job. But Cameron had already turned away. He didn't need to stay. The story was already written. The sedan door opened and out stepped a couple, early 40s, well-dressed but not flashy. She wore a soft blouse and carried a notepad. He wore loafers and a cautious expression. Both scanned the property with measured interest. Vanessa met them at the edge of the lot. "This is lot 17. The crown of Willow Heights. And the builder himself was just here, left a few minutes ago." "The builder?" the woman asked. "Yes. Cameron Ellis. He founded Ellis Development Group. This is one of his personal projects." The man looked around again, eyebrows raised. "We've seen his name on the signage. Didn't expect someone like that to actually be on site." Vanessa hesitated. "He's involved? More than most. Very hands-on." The woman's gaze drifted toward the distant hill, then down to the footprint of the home. "It feels different," she said. Her husband nodded. "Less like a product. More like someone cared." Vanessa didn't reply. Just listened. In the background, Richard stood on his porch watching them. Again. His arms were crossed, eyes squinting toward the lot. The clients didn't notice. But Vanessa did. And something about that, about who was observing who, settled into her chest. Later, as the couple walked the lot, the man asked softly, "Do you know if we'll ever meet the developer?" Vanessa glanced toward the frame of the house. "He doesn't need to be introduced," she said. "You've already met him. In the design. In the way the light falls. He's everywhere here." They didn't say anything else. They didn't have to. By the end of the week, something had changed at Willow Heights. Not dramatically. There were no grand announcements. No posted memos or neighborhood alerts. But people walked slower past lot 17. Stared longer. Looked differently. Richard, once the watchful neighbor, started waving just barely when Cameron's truck pulled in. He never approached again, never asked another question. He didn't need to. Ted Hawkins hadn't followed up about shared values since the meeting. Instead, he sent a quiet email about collaborating on a community garden near the front of the development. Cameron didn't reply. The story had traveled. Not just that Cameron Ellis was the developer, but that he had walked these streets before they were streets. That he'd been told to leave, then returned with the keys. The difference settled in the air like humidity, unspoken, but thick enough to feel. Even the construction crews carried themselves a little differently when he showed up. Less explaining, more respect. Cameron wasn't interested in teaching lessons. That was never the point. But lessons had been learned anyway. The kind that didn't come with statements or apologies. Just silence. And a shift. Saturday morning came quietly. The sky was overcast, the light soft and colorless. Cameron stood at the edge of lot 17, arms folded, gaze steady on the finished frame. It was almost ready. A few final touches, then it would list. It would sell quickly. That much was certain. But today wasn't about that. He watched as a boy on a bike rolled by. No parents in sight, just the kind of slow, meandering ride kids take when the world still feels open. The boy slowed near the lot, peered in, then kept going. No suspicion, no calculation. Just passing curiosity. Cameron exhaled, slow and even. Behind him, Mitch pulled up and stepped out. "Everything on track?" "Yeah." They stood there a while, not saying much, just looking. Eventually, Mitch broke the silence. "You want me to put the sign out front?" Cameron nodded once. Mitch walked to the truck bed, pulled out the wooden post with the branded placard. "Ellis Development Group, built with intent." He drove it into the soil gently, adjusted it to stand straight, then stepped back. Cameron didn't say anything. He just looked at it. The lot was no longer just dirt. It was claimed, shaped, seen. People would pass by and remember the house. Some would remember the builder. Fewer would remember the man who was once told to turn around at the gate. But that was fine, because he remembered, and that was enough.